The 4 parts to describing the distribution of a quantitative variable are shape, center, spread, and outliers. So we're going to use all 4 of those, or try all 4 of those out on this histogram here. So the histogram we have, this is the number of campsites at public parks in Vermont. So there are 46 parks total, and kind of the way to look at this is, for example, this bar here has a height of 2. So there are 2 parks that have between 150 and 160 campsites at them. Okay, so what I'd love for you to do is go ahead and pause the video, go through and identify the shape, center, spread, and outliers. Give that your best try, and then we'll come back and go through it together. Okay, so hopefully you gave that a try. Let's go through these. So the first question is, are there any outliers? When I look at this picture, I kind of see the main part of the distribution as being over here. And then it trails off over to the right-hand side. So if there are outliers, they're going to be over here on this right side. So the 2 things I'm looking for in those outliers is for a very short bar and for it to be pretty far away from the main grouping. So I start all the way on the right. This bar here has a height of 1, and it's really far away from the next closest bar. So this is definitely an outlier here. So yes, there's at least 1 outlier. These next 2 closest bars each have a height of 1 as well. This one we already identified as 2. This one's a 3. And so then the question is, this one's an outlier, but what about the rest of these? These 2 here that each have a height of 1, they're very short. They are decently far away, although there's another bar that's semi-close to them. So these are likely outliers. This bar here is a little taller and getting closer to the main group, so I doubt that that's an outlier. It's possible. If it is, it's really right on the border. And then this bar here, I would say is really not an outlier. It's pretty tall, it's pretty close to the rest of the group, so most likely not an outlier. Now, in chapter 1, you're just doing your best to ballpark these outliers. So I'll try and steer you in the questions to help you figure out what those outliers are. So maybe you'll have a list of countries with populations, and I'll say 2 of these countries are outliers. Which 2 countries is it? And you'll have some choices. And so then, you're either looking for the 2 countries with the biggest population or the smallest population. So I'll kind of try and steer you around in chapter 1 for what I'm looking for. And then in chapter 2, we have some fairly simple formulas we can use to actually mathematically determine if these are outliers or not. But for now, just your best guess is good. All right, the next part is the shape. So it starts with symmetric or skewed. So this is the main part of my distribution. Let me kind of draw where the rest of that cooked spaghetti noodle would fall. Probably look a lot like this. And so I see that it just kind of trails off and on and on and on that right-hand side. And so that tail is on the right side. So I'd say this is right skewed, which is letter C. And then the next question is the other part of shape, which is unimodal, bimodal, multimodal, or uniform. So you'll notice I didn't give you the bimodal choice here. And the reason for that is students sometimes look at this and they think this is one mountain peak here, and this is a second mountain peak. Really, these guys kind of belong together. And so I would say this is more unimodal than bimodal. And so I removed the bimodal choice. So it kind of forced you into the answer that I was looking for there. Okay, if you were taking a more advanced stats class, there's some ways of figuring that out. You'll have some more skills. And so then I would give you that full range of choices. But for now, you're just eyeballing it. So I'm going to kind of try and help steer you in the right direction. So unimodal is the best out of the choices here. So letter A. The approximate center of the distribution. So if we know there are 46 parks, that means we're looking for the piece of data that falls about in the 23rd spot. Okay, so halfway through that 46. So I need to figure out the heights of these bars. This looks like a 2. This one's a 3. These 2 here at the top are both 8. This guy's probably a 5. This one's a 3. So I think that should be enough for us to get to the 23rd value. So 2 and 3, that's the first 5 data values. I add 8 more, that gets me to the 13th data spot. I add another 8, and that gets me to the 21st. So the 23rd must be somewhere in this bar here, and that's got to be between 40 and 50. And so of the choices that are here, the only one that fits between 40 and 50 is letter B. Right? And then the last question here, what is the approximate spread of the distribution? So remember, for spread in chapter 1, we're using the range, which is max minus min. So my max value here, we don't have a mark over here, so it's a little hard to tell. But I don't know, maybe that's about 270 or so, maybe 280. Let's put 270. Well, we'll see what we get when we do the subtraction and which answer is going to be close. And then the smallest is going to be 0. So if I subtract those, I'm looking at about 270. So the closest one out of the choices here is definitely D. So I'll choose D as my answer there. All right, so hopefully you did fairly well with that, or hopefully the explanation helped you make some sense of it. But if not, feel free to reach out to me, send me an email, let me know, and I'm happy to go over it with you. And then just one thing to note on the homework, when you have multiple choices, you do need to write that answer in the blank there. You can certainly circle it, but make sure you transfer that answer over to the edge. So it makes it a lot easier to grade.